Okay. Judge the fatherless. The widowed and the fatherless. Here are some statistics on growingupwithoutafather.org. Growing up without a father. Any man can be a father, but it takes someone special to be a dad. Quote by Paul Boos. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 1/3 of all American children are growing up without their biological fathers. Additionally, 38 of all known cases of child abuse and or neglect involve the father and growing up with a father who is abusive or silent. You know, Vietnamese men, they don't really show their feelings, I'm sorry. Can be as damaging as growing up with no father at all. I love my father. He was a great man. He was a war hero. He saved many lives. And the children of those men and their children's children owe their lives to my father. And I love my father. A famous Australian infant photographer, Ann Geddes, said, okay, growing up without a dad is what this website is all about. In trying to satisfy their unmet emotional needs, fatherless girls are more likely to be sexually promiscuous and are more vulnerable to the advances of predators who see their emotional needs and profit from them through commercial sexual exploitation. Girls without dads who love them unconditionally and tell them they are beautiful are especially vulnerable to the lines of predators. Look at the pornography industry. I would wager to see most of them anyway. They're preyed on. They're preyed on. And if we consume pornography, we are part of the problem. An FBI agent asked an incarcerated sex trafficker where he found his young victims. The pimp explained, it's easy. I see a girl at the mall, I go up to her and I say, you have beautiful eyes. This is a pimp talking. If she smiles and says thanks, I leave her alone. But if she looks down and says, no I don't, I know I've got her. How filthy is that? If she looks down and says, no I don't, I know I've got her. How disgusting is that? Official U.S. data shows that 63% of youth suicide, 63%, 5 times the average. 70% of use in state-operated institutions, 9 times the average. And 85% of children with behavioral disorders, 20 times the average, are from fatherless homes. A 2002 Department of Justice survey of 7,000 inmates revealed that 39% of jail inmates lived in mother-owned households. Approximately 46% of jail inmates in 2002 had a previously incarcerated family member. 1/5 experienced a father in prison or jail. There's another statistic down the line, but it says that 85% of all youths sitting in prisons grew up in a fatherless home. Source, Fulton County, Georgia jail populations. Texas Department of Corrections, 1992. That was 92. It's worse now. Let me go back to the other ones. Let's see. Teens in single mother households are 30% more likely than teens in married mom and dad families to engage in risk behavior like drinking, drugs, delinquency, and dropping out of school. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, children in father-absent homes are 5 times more likely to be poor. In 2002, 7.8% of children in married couple families were living in poverty compared to 38.4% of children in female household families. If I'm reading too fast, this will be in the link. A child with a non-resident father is 54% more likely to be poor than his or her father. Based on birth and death data, for 217,798, 220,000 to make it easy. Children born in Georgia in 1989 and 1990, again, that's like 25 years ago, it's much worse now. Infants without a father's name on their birth certificate, 17.9% of the total, were 2.3 times more likely to die in their first year of life compared to infants with a father's name on their birth certificate. Well, that could be other things. A study of 13,986 women in prison showed that more than half grew up without their father. 42% grew up in a single mother household and 16% lived with neither parent. In a study of Interpol crime statistics of 39 countries, it was found that single parenthood ratios were strongly correlated with violent crimes. Strongly correlated. This was not true 18 years ago. Women whose parents separated between birth and 6 years old experienced twice the risk of early menstruation, more than 4 times the risk of early sexual intercourse, 2.5 times the higher risk of early pregnancy when compared to women in intact families. That's why we need more men mentors. The greatest want in this world is the want of men who will not be bought or sold though the heavens fall. Not money. You throw all the money at it you want, but we need men. Teens without fathers are twice as likely to be involved in early sexual activities, 7 times more likely to be pregnant as an adolescent, 7 times more likely. An analysis of child abuse cases in a nationally representative sample of 42 counties found that children from single-parent families are more likely to be victims of physical and sexual abuse than children who live with both biological parents, compared to their peers living with both. I had a stepfather, and he did terrible things. Compared to their peers living with both parents, children in single-parent homes had a 77% greater risk of being physically abused, 87% greater risk of being harmed by physical neglect, 165% greater risk of experiencing notable physical neglect, 74% greater risk of suffering from emotional neglect, 80% greater risk of suffering serious injury as a result of abuse, overall 120% greater risk of being endangered by some type of child abuse. This is an epidemic. This is a problem. And the Lord, the Bible, knew of this before long ago. The National Longitudinal Survey of Youth found that obese children are more likely to live in father-absent homes than are non-obese children. Researchers at Columbia University found that children living in two-parent household with a poor relationship with their father is 68% more likely to smoke, drink, use drugs, check. Compared to all teens in two-parent households, teens in single-mother households are at 30% higher risk than those in two-parent households. Fatherless children are twice as likely to drop out of school. Students living in father-absent homes are twice as likely, I am a high school dropout, to repeat a grade in school. 10% of children living with both parents have ever repeated a grade compared to 20% of children in stepfather families and 18% in mother-only families. Almost done here. 10 years after the breakup of a marriage, more than 2/3 of children report not having seen their father for a year. I didn't see my father until I was 11 or 12 years old. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 32 times the national average. 85% of all children that exhibit behavioral disorders come from fatherless homes. Source, Center for Disease Control, CDC. 80% of rapists motivated with displaced anger come from fatherless homes. I saw this horrible thing on the TV the other day, true crimes or whatever. These two young black males. Most of my friends are black. I grew up with, many black friends. You have to see the whole thing. You have to see things as they really are, not worse than they are, but see the truth. And they made friends with a girl. It was a white girl and a little white girl. They were just, 10, 20, 11, 12, 13, whatever they were. And she came over. And one of the brothers, both of them, I don't know, raped and murdered her. And they showed the parents, and they were so terrible. Not because they were black, but because they grew up fatherless. Because they grew up with a terrible, terrible background. And all the struggles that African Americans have had to go through. Treated like slavery and all those things, you guys know. 80% of rapists that exhibit behavioral disorders, and God can forgive and judge and forgive all and transform in grace. And in our church and in all churches are men and women who have done unspeakable things, murderers, rapists, thieves, who have come to the Lord, who have changed, who have been forgiven, who have been washed in the blood of the Lamb. And so there is hope for you, and there's hope for me, and there's hope for all of us. And don't you dare lose hope. And don't you dare kill yourself. And don't you dare give up. Never give up. Never give up. 71% of all high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from fatherless homes. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. 85% of all youth sitting in prisons grew up in a fatherless home. So if you want a divorce because you fell out of love with your husband, then do it. And when you see your kids grow up, God help us, God help us, God help me. God help us.